Fish Stripes Live. Friday night, late night with the Fish coming up. The start of a 3-game series between the Marlins and the reigning World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. It's Eli Sussman here, managing editor of Fish Stripes. No visuals of me today. I had some issues with the green screen, playing around with some settings here on the back end. But we filled up this whole left side of the screen with Kevin Barral, our Fish Stripes intern, with Alex Carver from Fish on the Farm. And making his Fish Stripes Live debut, my deputy editor, Louis Adio-Weiss, talking about this much-anticipated series with a much-anticipated pitching matchup for tonight. You could not ask for anything better. I think every single major league team is in action today, but there's not a single game that has a better matchup tonight than Sandy Alcantara versus Clayton Kershaw. And it lines up really well to have Louis on here because he is our I know you're a big Clayton Kershaw admirer and appreciator of his entire career and what he's done. And we usually start with like all the Marlins stuff here, but wanted to pop in with you about Clayton Kershaw first. And for people that everybody knows who he is because he's been around forever, but it's just crazy to think that he is still one of the top pitchers in this game 14 years right after he started his major league career. How is he doing it? Like, I'm sure you like follow along with what he's done so far early on the season, about a quarter of the year into the season. And performance wise, he's like right up there with Sandy, if not even a little bit better. So how exactly is he still making it work? What now in his age 33 season?
Yeah, and it's weird because of the slew of injuries that he's had. He's been such a dominant pitcher for so long. You know, the back is one of those things that kind of scares you with a pitcher, especially a left-hander who has that very unique drop and drive delivery that he does. But and especially in an era when velocity is, plays such a premium in today's game, I think Kershaw is one of the last guys, and I think you see it, with Hendricks and Greinke and even to a degree Lucas Giolito in Chicago. But Kershaw is a pitcher, and I think when he came up, the stuff was there, back when Kershaw first debuted, a guy throwing 94 to 96 with a big 12-6 curveball. The first comparison you're going to make, especially with the Dodgers, Sandy Koufax. But, the fastball velocity isn't what it is anymore. He did regain a little bit of it last year, but I think it's just location. And I think you'll learn, some of the best pitchers of all time kind of made it work by just kind of like being picture perfect. Christy Mathewson, if you want to go back historically, Greg Maddux for a recent guy. Greinke now, Kershaw is in that vein. Even Warren Spahn back in the 50s and the early 1960s. Those are kind of people that I kind of look at Kershaw as to being at this stage of his career. I mean, his strikeout numbers are still slightly above average. But he just doesn't walk guys, and it's the slider that's making up for the lack of fastball velocity. And safe to say that Miami has their work cut out for him tonight. I think the last time we faced him, he threw 7 shutout innings against us, 10 strikeouts at home in Miami. So going to be a tough assignment tonight, but I think we got a good guy going against him in Sandy. I think Sandy's kind of ascending to that next level. I told you, Eli, I think you and me were talking the other day over Twitter, and I think Alcantara is safe to say he's among the best 15 to 20 pitchers in baseball at this point. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in on that. Maybe contextualize where Sandy's kind of become or where he is in this echelon of great pitchers in this game full of so many of them.
He's incredible, man. I mean, the biggest difference we've been pointing to ever since spring training is his changeup and how he's using it more often. He's getting more swings and misses with it than ever before. And so that alone, on top of his the fact that he's throwing even harder than ever this season with his average fastball velo, especially with DeGrom temporarily on the IL, he's right up there with the hardest throwers in all of baseball at the moment, to go along with that change that makes the change play even better. His consistency is just off the charts. Like every single time that he's on the mound, you're getting 6 innings and you're getting less than 3 runs allowed. This is only his second time ever facing the Dodgers. The last time he faced them, he kind of got blown up back in 2019. So I guess from that element, there's a little bit of a question exactly how this will go, just because of the lack of familiarity, I guess, on both sides between him and the Dodgers. But overall, man, he is, even in this rotation where we've been so thrilled with what Trevor has done and Pablo has continued doing what he did last year. I mean, to me, Sandy is still the one that I trust unconditionally. I probably trust the most in any matchup.
Yeah. Sandy is that he just continues to grow. I mean, as good as he already is, he just continues to get better even now. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you guys that he's establishing himself as that upper echelon pitcher that needs to be taken seriously. Probably top 10, 15 in the game of baseball right now with Alcantara. So, a great pitcher to have, definitely the ace of the staff, and I think he's just going to get better, guys.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy's only 25. He still has a long time left in his career, and he's only going to get better. He's I think he's the oldest pitcher from how long he's been with the team in that rotation. So I really do like what he's doing with this team, and this is why they have him as the number one pitcher. They have the trust in him, and I think this is a guy who I think would face well against Kershaw today.
Yeah, I messed with the settings to make sure that we could see Jesus in the background. He is he's definitely our featured player at the moment. Just going through this Marlins lineup, I mean, the top two are pretty much automatic at the moment, given the available options that they have with Miguel Rojas at leadoff and Jesus Aguilar batting seconds. And then pretty much the rest of the way, no matter how you line things up, there's just a lot of question marks about what you're going to get on every given night. That was a very weird Diamondback series that we're coming out of where, I mean, the last couple games, doing just enough to pull those wins out. But for the most part, just relying so much on Rojas and Aguilar. I mean, for tonight, Garrett Cooper in the number 3 spot. He's one of the coldest hitters on the team. And I just had a long article this week about how frustrating it's been to watch Cooper and kind of all the mysteries involved there. And yet he's the guy that's right in the heart of your order. Adam Duvall, Brian Anderson, Isan Diaz, Chad Wallach, Magneuris Sierra, and Sandy Alcantara. I guess I want to touch on Sierra because he's getting the start tonight against Clayton Kershaw, which I don't think anybody could have anticipated happening even a few weeks ago with how Sierra was hitting. He's been picking it up a lot lately, but yet still obviously has the platoon disadvantage going against the lefty Clayton Kershaw, and this means that he's playing ahead of Lewis Brinson tonight. Alex, what do we think about that? The fact that Sierra is in the lineup again and that Brinson is out again. Do you think could it be that little finger issue with Brinson is still acting up, or is this just like playing the hot hands with Sierra?
I mean, I guess it would be the latter because I don't think his finger issue was serious. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not there. Maybe he's not able to grip the bat as well. I'm not sure. But that's a shock for sure, as you mentioned, Eli, that Brinson, as good as he's been pretty much recently, especially on this trip, that he's not getting the start against the lefty. Kind of weird. I know Mags has made some good plays in the outfield. His bat's been okay lately, but Mags against the lefty, I don't like that. I think that's a hole in the lineup. And then, as you mentioned with Cooper as well, still hitting third somehow. I'm not down Mattingly. I don't pretend to be, but some question marks for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know how Cooper's batting third. There's a couple guys in that lineup I would easily put third, like Duvall or Brian Anderson. Sierra, I have no idea why he's in there. I think I would have put Cooper for sure. He's a guy who bats well against lefties. Sierra doesn't, so it's a little bit questionable in this lineup tonight. But Matt Lee knows something we don't, so that's for sure.
I'm kind of surprised that Isan Diaz wasn't somebody that they considered to maybe put in that 3 spot. I think the biggest thing you want to do with somebody like Kershaw, who's relatively efficient and throws a lot of strikes, is you're going to be hard pressed to draw walks off of him, but you're going to want to maybe get somebody in that 3 spot, especially in that top part of your lineup that can really work a pitcher, especially somebody like that in the first inning. You want to for Miami to have success in this game, you're going to have to throw make Kershaw throw 18, 20, 22 pitches in the first inning, get the pitch count up, try to get him out early. I mean, the Dodgers bullpen is good, but to the degree it hasn't been as good as the Marlins. I mean, the Marlins bullpen entered play with a sub, 3, or I believe the ERA was like under 3.3 entering play tonight. So, you want to get to that Dodgers bullpen early. We know Kenley Jansen's not the same pitcher that he once was, although the velocity has creeped back up. But, if you can get Kershaw out of there before, the 6th or 7th inning, I think you're in a good spot. And, again, you got Sandy going on the mound. So this is the game I've had circled all season, and we're, 30-something games in at this point?
Yeah, since I'm in here, I might as well jump on Louis' point, which is that the Marlins have a 3.27 bullpen ERA right now. That's the 6th best in baseball. and the Dodgers bullpen ERA right now is 3.97, which is the 19th best in baseball. If you want to swing that around, that's the 11th worst. So, the bullpens could definitely come into play here, but the Marlins are going to have to get some hits off these starters, and we know that tonight is Kershaw, tomorrow is Bauer. They dodged Walker Buehler now because the Dodgers pushed him back a day. But this is certainly going to be a challenge for the Marlins lineup. We know about the inconsistency that they've had all year. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge for them to try and find some offense against a very tough pitching staff. And it's a huge challenge for two of Miami's top guys in Sandy tonight and Pablo on Sunday to face one of the better lineups in the league. So.
Yeah, Ethan, what we were touching on right before you hopped on, just your quick thoughts on the fact that Sierra is starting today against the lefty. He's been hitting pretty well during that Diamondback series, but for this entire season before that, like not at all, and especially not against lefties. And Mattingly has talked like repeatedly about how Sierra doesn't really have a role on the team, that just very blunt about the fact that they weren't expecting much with the bat, and now he's in the lineup tonight instead of Lewis Brinson. So is that something that surprises you, that he got this opportunity?
Yeah, well, this is usually a spot where you would probably see Lewis Brinson, right? But I think the Marlins kind of have to ride the hot hand right now, and Mags has 4 hits in his last 2 games, so you're kind of riding the hot hand. Cooper's been struggling. Brinson, it's a struggle, to find some consistency. So the Marlins are just going to try and find consistency in this outfield right now. We've talked a lot about them staying afloat, and they just kind of have to stay afloat. And with that comes the fact that sometimes you got to ride the hot hand. There's no Starling Marte right now to lock down center field every day. And so I think if Sierra's out there, and he's got 2 hits in each of his last 2 games, I don't see why riding him isn't a good idea. But yeah, he's struggled against lefties, but the numbers are up a little bit over the last few games. So, I like what Mags brings in terms of a bit of a dynamicism to the team. With his defense is really strong and his base running is really strong. And Mattingly kind of raved about some of that stuff last night. But yeah, he's been the odd man out all year. So the fact that he's getting a start against a guy like Kershaw is certainly interesting. It could also suggest the fact that, Lewis Brinson was dealing with that finger issue, and we've seen him in the lineup a little bit, but it could suggest the fact that this is now 3 straight starts for Sierra, that maybe Lewis dealing with something that has worsened and is sort of becoming a bit of a problem for him, and it's the reason that he's out tonight.
Yeah, the one guy that is not factoring into this game, but fingers crossed maybe factors into the series, the guy on the screen, Jazz Chisholm Jr. I know that the one positive about these super late West Coast starts is that you get to actually pay full attention to the minors, and then you get to pivot to the Marlins. It's been really a big adjustment for me, the last week and a half, trying to keep my eyes on everything at the same time when it starts on East Coast time. So the fact that this road trip has been a good opportunity to stay entirely focused on Jacksonville when they're on the field. And Jazz has been incredible in those games. He looks exactly like the guy he was right before the injury, including tonight, hitting a home run, getting 2 hits. Through 3 games now, he is OPSing 1389 in 3 games on his rehab assignment, in addition to stealing a couple bases, in addition to turning some double plays. The team has an interesting choice here between the fact that this was a relatively minor injury to begin with. He wasn't out that long, and now he's doing everything you could want him to do during these rehab assignments to show he's healthy. This is either the opportunity where they fly him out to LA to actually contribute and step in. We mentioned how this offense has all these question marks in it, and he is someone that's an immediate upgrade, whether he's playing over Eson or playing over Birdie. That he just brings so much more to the game than those guys do, with all due respect. Are they going to make that decision to bring him out right now for these couple games against one of the best teams that they'll face all year? Or do they play it slow and have him meet the team when that series starts in Philadelphia on Tuesday? I guess, Alex and we talked about this a little bit right before going live. So I guess we should just bring up here on the stream, Alex, what do you think is going to happen with Jazz and when they officially reinstate him from the IL?
So, I mean, I think, that this is kind of target at Tuesday first game in Philadelphia, personally, Eli, because if you look at it, the full minor leagues, all of minor league baseball is off on Monday, right? So that was probably his targeted off day to get him to travel out to Philadelphia, and they probably didn't want to fly him commercial in the middle of a series. They wanted probably him to get this last game in tonight. Did very well in that game, homered straight dead center. So, I mean, he's ready. It's just a matter of when. They probably just want him to relax there for, these last two games, while the Marlins are in LA, and then bring him out, probably because of travel reasons. And then again, like I said, that off day was going to be there regardless, whether he was with the Marlins or whether it was, with, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. So I really think they kind of have that day targeted. I thought they had that day targeted for Alfaro as well. That's probably not going to happen. But yeah, I just think in terms of distance and travel, they didn't want to fly him commercially all the way out to LA. They wanted to see him play tonight, to get a last game in. So I just think it kind of set up that way, unfortunately, because of the travel. But he's ready, man. And he's done very well in every game he's been in. Hamstring looks fine. So he's going to be here very likely on Tuesday.
Yeah, you want to get him back in that lineup, especially with looking at the numbers today of where Miami is overall offensively. I believe per Fangraphs, we have negative 0.4 offensive WAR. Our team weighted runs created plus is 92. Everybody knows that like 100 is league average. And, Jazz Chisholm has a 155 OPS plus this year. He hasn't played since April 27th. And since then, Miami really hasn't hit. It's been interesting the way that we've played games. I've been thinking about this actually because, I think especially as sports fans and just people who kind of cover the sport and a sport like baseball that's so predicated on narratives, there's a lot of comparing and, analyzing that goes on here. And when I look at like the Marlins, I've kind of heard a lot with them this year is like, they remind me a lot of the 2010 San Francisco Giants, where the pitching is going to keep you in games. You kind of just have to scratch those runs out late. But if you fall behind early, things can get ugly. But we need an igniter in the lineup like Jazz. And, not having him is it's been hard. I mean, again, I think that we're just such a better team when he's in the lineup. I just really hope, when he comes back, things kind of start to fall into place more because, again, it's just been really difficult.
Yeah,
Well,
Jazz is the guy who.
Sorry, go ahead. Go. No, go ahead. Go.
Jazz is a guy who's just going to bring energy. I think he's going to do everything that he is asked to do. He's a guy who's having a great season. He's batting 290, 4 home runs. This is a guy who I think for sure is going to bring an offensive spark to the team once he comes back. It's going to be interesting to see what the roster move or the transaction is going to be. And I think he will come back for the next series. It will be a little bit weird to see him this series just because of the timing of his, how he's coming back. But I mean, this is a guy again who I think is just going to bring a spark to this team, energy-wise and on the field.
Yeah, and Miggy Rowe talked about this last night. I asked him a question about, this Marlins team. If they can just get some offensive consistency, don't you think they could be pretty good? Because the bullpen is really good, the starting pitching we all know about, and they're very good defensively. So all of a sudden, if you start scratching runs across, like that's a pretty good recipe for success. And I think that Jazz is certainly going to help in the scratching runs across department. He might not just scratch runs across. He's a guy that obviously can hit the ball out of the ballpark, can hit for power, put balls in gaps, and really just create offense just by himself. And I said last night that Aguilar has kind of been the catalyst, and he has because without Marte, without Jazz, they've needed one really badly. And, there's been a lot of guys that haven't really stepped up. They're looking for one, and Aguilar has kind of been that. But, Miggy Rowe said that they're just kind of staying afloat, and all of a sudden, you add Marte, you add Jazz, you add Eliezer, you add Sixto. Sixto's a little more down the line. But you're looking at Marte started his hitting progression. Eliezer is going to throw a rehab start in the next few days, and we know Jazz is ready. He looks ready. He's seeing pitches very well. He's been taking walks down in Jacksonville, and then obviously tonight he's got an RBI single and a home run. So I just think that this team is staying afloat, and when they add that firepower, yes, they can become a pretty good baseball team. You're looking at a team that can be pretty good and can make some noise. So I think that the Marlins, they've got a bit of a ways to go in terms of really competing in the division. They know they're in a tough division. That's what Tani said when I asked him the same question that I asked Miggy Rowe. But Jazz is just a guy that adds another guy. They just need another guy in the lineup that can produce something on a nightly basis, because right now they don't have any. Dickerson's been pretty good, but he's not in there against lefties. Duvall, is one of the streakiest hitters in the major leagues, it feels like. And you're looking, on down the line, you're looking at a bunch of question marks in terms of what guys have provided this year. So when you add Jazz back, and that he's hitting 290, 375 OBP, 551 slug. He's got a 155 weighted runs created plus, and he was already over 1 WAR when he got hurt. This is a guy that looks like he's just going to jump right back into it, And so I think when you add him back, it's obviously going to add another dynamic to the offense that's really been missing, not just at the plate, but on the base paths defensively. Just the way that he brings an energy to the club in the dugout, especially. So I think we know the Marlins miss Jazz, but it'll certainly be a huge a huge thing to get him back, and I think it could definitely be a catalyst for this offense.
Yeah, in the month of May, this whole team, the Marlins as a team, they had 3 stolen bases in the entire month ever since, without Jazz, obviously, during that entire time. I mean, this is a team that last year, very quietly, they were second, I think, in the National League in steals, almost won a game. And then this year, they were kind of on a similar pace early on, mostly because of Jazz. He
has 7, Eli, in 22 games. He had 7 before he went down.
He has 7, and the rest of the team this season has like 14 combined. He is a third of their entire total, even though he's missed, now a few weeks. I don't want to point fingers too much at any one person, but John Birdie was someone I was super high on this year. I thought he would be the exact same guy he had been the previous 2 years, and he's been a little bit better lately, but I think very recently he only got his first stolen base of the entire season, which is so bizarre to think about because he's someone that has the exact same kind of speed as Jazz does. If you were to race those two, they're kind of in that same tier, and yet he hasn't been able to get on base in the first place as much as you would like. And then once he gets on, hasn't been as successful as he had been in the past couple of years. So that's kind of been one of the holes that you thought they could have patched a little bit if Birdie was playing exactly the way he had been the previous couple of years. But with him kind of down a half peg from that, they've been really feeling the difference for sure. You touched on one other thing about the lineup tonight and how against the lefty Dickerson is sitting. Do we feel like that is something that should be so automatic when the fact is he is one of the few guys healthy at the moment that has that great offensive potential, that works really deep counts, and at times this year he's been extremely hot and just for the most part been pretty consistent when he is in the lineup. But given the other options, that decision is something that I think will have to continue to really iron out between him and Garrett Cooper. The fact that Cooper is always in there against the lefties and that Dickerson's always sitting, even though those guys they're not really on the same playing field right now, where Dickerson has kind of been what you expected for the most part, not amazing, but extremely solid offensively and probably definitely more valuable defensively. And yet Cooper is still in there almost every single day, despite these continued struggles.
Well, one thing that I want to say, Eli, is I was actually talking about this with my brother today, so this is funny, but I think the reason that Corey Dickerson's numbers look so good right now, he's hitting 312, 132 weighted runs created plus, is because he hasn't been playing against lefties. But actually against lefties right now, he's hitting 286, which is pretty good, especially for him. You're looking at a guy that is never really going to, be great against lefties. But let's see, right now versus lefties, 286 with an 824 OPS. Actually, he has a higher OPS against lefties than he gets against righties, but that's obviously, a smaller sample. He's played 32 games versus righties and 18 against lefties. I should do at-bats. He's got 88 at-bats against righties and 21 at-bats against lefties. So you're looking at, the fact that he's dealing with a smaller sample size against lefties, but he has been pretty good in that small sample size. But if you stretch it out over a larger sample size, if he's getting all those ABs that he's getting against righties as against lefties as well, I'm not sure his numbers look that good. as good as they do now. But yeah, he's having a great year, and I've been vocal with what I think about the year that Cooper is having, and especially defensively. You touched on it, Eli. Duvall has been so great defensively that if you put him in right field and Dickerson in left field. Dickerson isn't the greatest defender, but that's a lot better than having Cooper out in right field right now. So yeah, I don't know that it should be automatic, but if the Marlins are, I saw somebody just say today that, maybe the Marlins are trying to keep trade value up and his numbers look good, but I don't know if I would go that far. But the fact of the matter is he's been producing against righties, and what they're doing right now has been working in terms of making Corey Dickerson successful. But if Cooper continues to struggle, and he showed a little signs the last couple games, he's taking some walks, he's hit some balls hard, but I wouldn't go as far as saying he looks on the verge of a breakout. So I think it's fair to question the fact that he's sitting against lefties every night.
Well, you guys talked about playing the hot hand with Magneuris Sierra, right? And maybe he's a little bit hotter than Lewis Brinson right now, and he's in there starting against one of the best starting pitchers in the game of baseball. And then you have Garrett Cooper in there, who's really struggling. I don't think he's anywhere close to doing much of anything at all. Just doesn't look good at the plate. Swings are long and just not good. Very far off the ball. I mean, I don't get this lineup as a whole, guys. Honestly, A, with Magneuris, and then B, I know the platoon splits and everything with Dickerson, but the fact that Magneuris is in there as well as Garrett Cooper, I don't get it.
I think you also want to look at previous history with Dickerson, his career against Kershaw. I'm looking at the numbers right now, and they're nothing to write home about. I remember when Kershaw threw his one no-hitter in 2014, I believe Dickerson was the final out in that no-hitter. And for his career against Kershaw, here's the line, 2 for 14 with 8 strikeouts. So I don't, he's not exactly Ted Williams against Kershaw, but most people aren't unless your name's Jay Bruce. So, yeah, I mean, it is good to see that he is hitting lefties this year. I think that will boost his trade value. I mean, the guy's boasting a 380 on base percentage right now for a guy who's normally 320, 330 range, but he's going to hit you 285, 290. That's going to mean a lot for a contender. I mean, hopefully, we're not in the boat where we have to trade him, because at this point, a guy in his early to mid 30s on the final year of a 2-year deal, I don't really know what you're really going to get back in return for that. But it is a little strange that he is not playing tonight either. So.
Yeah, this lineup has a lot of questions, if I'm being honest. I mean, Cooper at 3, Sierra. I would have put Dickerson in there just to see what happens. It's a lot of questions with this lineup. We'll see if the night goes well. I think minimal adjustments are going to be done, but if it doesn't go well, we're going to see big adjustments with this lineup for sure.
Yeah, well, that'd be quite a stretch. I don't even think that's much of a hypothetical. I have a hard time seeing this night going great offensively. Somebody asked Joey asked us if we got us winning this game tonight, and I'd say it's a pretty unlikely. It's just based on putting this group out. And the one fascinating thing I've noticed about this team is, regardless of who is starting this game, is that the Marlins offense, it kind of hibernates that first half of the game, no matter who the starting pitcher is. And then depending if you get the right matchup, and maybe the Dodgers are the right matchup because their bullpen has kind of fallen short of expectations, that they really do rake against relief pitchers. Obviously Jesus Aguilar does. He's a guy that kind of props up all those stats because he in particular always finds a way late in those games if they need it to come through. But as a team, it's really weird, where, as you would expect, like the first half of the game, they are maybe the worst offense in baseball overall. And then you look at the later innings and they are top 6, top 8 in terms of OPS, in terms of actual getting on base. That up and down the lineup, a lot of these guys really improve for whatever reason when they actually face those specialists late in the games who are throwing harder. There's no rhyme or reason to that. I don't think. It's still early in the year, but I just found that fascinating. So maybe that's what Mattingly was thinking. He's kind of like throwing up his hands because maybe it doesn't matter too much who's in the starting lineup. The starting lineup's not doing much anyway. He wants to be in a position to bring in impactful guys off the bench in the later innings because they've had some success with that for whatever reason. That's the one thing you got to give Mattingly some credit for. There are some things to second guess about his managerial style and some of the in-game decisions that he makes. But in terms of calling on pinch hitters at the right time, he's generally been pretty successful with that. And even though overall as a team they've dropped a lot of these really close games, that it pulls them closer, those decisions that he makes. And it's just a weird tick with this offense. It tends to like come through late when they really need it. But yeah, against Kershaw, as Lewis mentioned, like Dickerson is the one guy that has substantial experience against him, and that experience has been extremely one-sided. Although Miggy Rowe had a home run against him a few years ago that kind of shocked everybody. It came up in a big spot too. It was a scoreless game, and he ripped it down the line. That was before anybody even thought of Miggy as like an everyday player or an impactful offensive guy. So with him, maybe he's the guy to watch tonight. One guy who ordinarily is already playing at a great level, but obviously knows Kershaw pretty well as a former teammate and as a guy that he's homered off at least once in his life.
I think on the note on Aguilar, though, with just how fantastic he's been since he hit his first home run. Among hitters with at least 70 plate appearances, the guy has the third highest weighted runs created plus in the sport. He's the only two people that he trails are Giancarlo Stanton and Yordan Alvarez, and obviously those are guys with decent track records of being big home run hitters. But Aguilar has the better striker rate among the three of them. I mean, it's what Jesus Aguilar is doing right now. He's got a 207 weighted runs created plus, essentially over the last 20 games played. I mean, he's been Mike Trout for 20 games offensively. I mean, you're never really going to get the defense, though he did make that really nice play when LeCastro tried to steal that base in Arizona to end that game on Wednesday and snap their 4-game losing streak. But offensively, it's just – I mean, him and Dickerson have been essentially really the only two bright spots in an offense that's just really been anemic for what seems like 3-4 years now.
I think anemic is a good word there, Lewis. And when you take a look at the numbers for Aguilar, you don't realize how good these numbers are when you're watching him, but you take a step back and you look at the fact that he's got a 975 OPS and a 162 weighted runs created plus right now. He's at 1.3 WAR. I mean, the highest WAR of his career is 3.1 in 2018, and he's actually hitting at a level that's better than his 2018 level, which was the best year of his career. He had 135 weighted runs created plus that year. His strikeout percentage is down nearly 10% from that year. And Mattingly has talked about the fact that he's just becoming a well-rounded hitter. He's not just a power guy anymore. He's a good hitter. Early in the year, a lot of people were saying that he was a slap hitter because he was hitting everything to the right, to right center and the other way. And he was using all parts of the field, and you weren't seeing that power. And then, in San Francisco, it just clicked. And I don't know if it actually was Theodore Apas or if he just found something in his swing, whatever it is. And it's all on the road. I mean, he's already surpassed his home run total from last year. His 36 games this year, he's got 9 home runs. He had 8 in 51 games last year. This guy has found something. He's just a new hitter. He's hitting the shit out of the ball. Like, let me just say it now. Like, he's hitting the crap out of it. His average exit velocity right now is 90.4 miles per hour. He's been fantastic. And it's 36.9 hard hit percentage right now. I want to look up where these numbers rank within baseball in the percentiles. But like you said, it's been him and Dickerson. They've been the bright spots, but really he's been the catalyst. He started everything. He got the win started the other night with his 2-run home run in the first inning. He got it started last night. And he's the catalyst on the field. He's the catalyst in the dugout because we know what kind of energy he brings to the dugout and how great he's been in the clubhouse. And I mean, right now you're looking at 85th percentile in K percentage, 75th percentile in walk percentage, 67th percentile in average exit velocity. This guy is having a great year. And, Mattingly said that he's a guy that deserves more respect as one of the great hitters in the National League East. And I do think that it's time, if he keeps this up sustainable for another 2-3 weeks, that you can start talking about him as legitimately one of the better hitters in the National League East. And I mean, he's only 30. He's only been in the bigs since 2014. So this is a guy that could end up having a really nice career. And with the DH coming next year, he's a guy that the Marlins should really consider keeping around for a few more years. If he can keep up maybe not this level of play, but even just something just shy of this level of play, it would be worth keeping him around for sure, I think.
So-
Yeah, Aguilar's a guy.
Absolutely.
No, you could go. You could go, Alex.
So the one thing to mention, just quick one for me, is there a come down? Like, is there who Jesus Aguilar is, or is there a come down? Personally, I think he's playing over his head. As great as it is that to see him pick up the slack, guys like Jazz and Marte that are down with injury and everything, I personally think, given his career, that he is playing a little bit north of what his, what he usually is, his normal temperate value. So,
How dare you? He's the heart of this team. No, but continue. Yeah, that's fair.
The question is, I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but the question is, what do you do? What do you do with Jesus Aguilar when you have Gerard Encarnacion and Lewin Diaz, who is not far away whatsoever, and I think could be here right now under a different circumstance? What do you do with Jesus Aguilar? So, I mean, obviously he's playing with all-star potential right now. He may make the all-star game if he keeps this up, as Ethan mentioned, for a week or two. What do you do? Do you trade high, or do you think this is the new Jesus Aguilar? Personally, where I'm at on it is I think there's a come down. Like I said, I think that he's playing a bit over his head. But that's my opinion. You guys can give me yours.
Yeah, Aguilar is one of those guys who I think has been the brightest spot on this Marlins team, as you guys all mentioned. This is a guy who I think, when he is needed and when the Marlins need offense, he's the one who's been sparking it. We saw it in San Francisco. We saw it in Arizona. He pretty much homered in almost all the games. This is a guy who I think is not just good offensively, but he's great defensively as well. I mean, he makes plays when they're needed. I really like Aguilar, and I think he's here to stay for now. And they have him for a low price, too. I mean, they pretty much claimed him off waivers from the Tampa Bay Rays last season. So this shows that the Marlins have looked deep into not just free agency, but the waiver wire, too. And acquiring a guy like Aguilar, who's just made an immediate impact to this team right now.
Well, one thing I want to say, sorry, Lewis. I'll just go quick right here.
No, I was just gonna make some snarky comment about how great it is not to worry about the long-term future of your team when Jeffrey Lurie is not your owner. To actually build a decent core of good players, regardless of whether or not they're 25 or 30 like Aguilar. But
And the other thing is good value signings, like Kevin just mentioned. The Marlins got Aguilar for basically nothing. And there's been some, Anthony Bender came out of nowhere. So there's been some good value signings. But just the one thing I wanted to mention with Aguilar is, you talked about the sustainability, Alex, and you want to look at how sustainable it is. Maybe not at this 162 weighted runs created plus level that he could be sustainable at, but he's a guy that's had 114, 135, 122 weighted runs created pluses in his, in the past. But look at the walk and strikeout rate right now. His walk rate is 11.9% and his K rate is 15.4%, which is the lowest of his career. So this is a guy that isn't striking out a lot, and his approach at the plate is clearly really improved from where we've usually seen it. And, when you have a good approach, that leads to good results if you hit the ball hard. So, he's doing all of that right now. So, look, is he going to be a 162 weighted runs created plus player over the course of a season? Probably not, but I think he can keep up something along this lines of this level. I don't think he's going to crash all the way back to earth. And I'm sure you're saying that the come down would be something towards, maybe a 120 weighted runs created plus or something, but it looks for now, unless that K rate just starts cranking up like crazy, it looks like it can be fairly sustainable for a little bit here.
Yeah, just to close for me, I think you have to also look at what happens with the win-loss record when it comes to the conversation of moving him, maybe at the deadline, to a contender. Are the Marlins out of contention at the deadline? Probably in this division, they're not. So I think that probably also has something to do with it. And then you got to think about bringing Marte back, which I definitely think the Marlins will want to do. So yeah, I mean, he has value right now. I mean, if we're at the deadline right now and we are where we are, he has substantial value to a contender, and he's 30 years old. So, I mean, he's not ancient, he's not old, but he's getting towards the later stages of his career. And we have guys that are ready right now in the minor leagues to come up and replace him. So, I mean, do you trade high or do you hope this is who Jesus is? That's the question. I guess we'll wait and see.
I think what you have to look at, too, is you have to contextualize the division itself, because the NL East is such a, it's going to be one of those divisions that I think really won't be decided until the last week, 10 days of the season. I mean, if you look at every single team in that division, nobody is perfect. I mean, the Braves have won the division the 3 years running, but they just experienced a setback with Soroka. Acuna seems to get hurt every week. You know, Freddie Freeman's been doing all right, but he hasn't been the Freddie Freeman that won the National League MVP last year. The Nationals are arguably the worst defensive team in baseball, or at least among that. Their starting pitching has not been healthy other than Max Scherzer. We know Patrick Corbin's been inconsistent. The bats, Josh Bell, Kyle Schwarber have been inconsistent. Miami obviously have their offensive issues. The pitching's has never been a question this season thus far. With what me and Ethan discussed previously with the ERA being what it is for our team, it's kind of just been the offense. Our biggest issue is we just really haven't been able to hit. Our rated runs created plus is 21st in baseball at this point right now. So we're in the bottom third of teams as far as overall production is concerned, but we can pitch. And like I said, I compared it to the 2010 Giants earlier. They were a team that, they would just kind of have to win 2-1, 3-2 games on the strength of guys like Tim Lincecum and Matt Cain. And, we're kind of doing it right now with Sandy, Pablo, and Trevor Rogers. And then hopefully, Sixto, if he returns healthy, and then eventually Edward Cabrera. I mean, this is a team I think that's we're kind of building ourselves in a similar fashion to the Dodgers. And it's no surprise because if you look where Kim Ng was for a long time, she worked in the Dodgers system for over a decade. She helped draft guys like Kershaw and Andre Ethier, Matt Kemp, like guys that had substantial success at the major league level. And for Kershaw's case, obviously first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the 5 to 10 greatest pitchers of all time. So I think, we're moving in the right direction as far as long-term success goes. But as far as us contending this year, we need to be more consistent offensively. If we're 3 games under by July 31st, chances are we're going to start selling off assets because we have Bleday coming. We're hoping Lewin Diaz hits more in the minor leagues and eventually translate that over to the major leagues. But again, you just never know. Right now, the best team in this division is the Mets. And unless the Mets continue to falter, which they haven't been because it looks like they just aren't going to lose a game anytime soon, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens. But, we still got 2 months until the trade deadline to really, really determine what we're going to do direction-wise. And these next 2 months it's imperative we play well because if we don't, then, we're going to sell guys off and turn the page on some of the older guys we have on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe the tightest division, I think, in baseball right now, and it's going to go down to the wire, as you said, Lewis. And when it comes to trade deadline, the only position I'm really looking at right now is outfield. They're so crowded at the outfield in the minors and up here in the majors that I think they're going to start making decisions and pretty quickly. This is maybe why Sierra's in the lineup. I'm not going to say that it's because of the trade deadline, but maybe they're trying to experiment different players and see if they fit on this team right now. Because I think they're trying to win right now. They're trying to at least make the playoffs. And this is a team, I think, that with the offense, which is the only issue pretty much right now, they're going to have to start making decisions. And maybe this is one of them of trying out Sierra, going back to that.
Yeah. One of our guys, our loyal listeners, Sean, before the show, he asked which big-time prospect is going to make his debut next for Miami. And so we kind of danced around it, but they do come to a point where they consider trading one of these veteran position players, but kind of one of these pieces that is no longer part moving forward at the corner outfield spots. Then the obvious call-up guy is Jesus Sanchez, who, again, hit another home run tonight after, a precautionary injury situation. He jumps right back into the action and continues to be the hottest hitter on the planet at any level of professional baseball. So he's the guy that, I mean, there's only so much time that you could hit 500 at AAA before you force your way up. But I don't think his call-up is imminent, but certainly once we get to closer to mid-season and they're at a point where they have to make those tough decisions, or when they feel like maybe Jesus is just as good as one of these veterans that is taking up a spot in those corner outfield spots, that he's the one to come up. One other thing I wanted to mention about that Aguilar is it's going to be a test also of ownership as well, because he did earn a bit of a raise heading into this year via arbitration. If they hold on to him at the pace he's going, he's putting up the kind of counting stats right now that gets you really well paid in arbitration as well. He's a guy that's trending towards, if you keep him next year, if he's not at this pace, but relatively close to it, then he's an $8-9 million player next year. So, and that's for most teams, that's like a drop in the bucket, especially if it's going to be an all-star caliber guy. But with the Marlins, they've only been willing to carry a couple of those guys at a time on their roster. And with so many other of these relatively young guys heading towards arbitration themselves, I think that's going to be a huge factor when they decide whether to hold on to him or whether to simply just clear that space for Lewin Diaz, who will be earning the league minimum for the next couple of years. And that's going to be really, I think for me, it's going to be a no-brainer. I think that's why anything aside from keeping up this pace, that Aguilar won't necessarily fit in their plans moving forward, just because of those huge potential cost savings of simply calling up that guy in Lewin, who was in the majors last year and who the organization really already feels very highly about. That to me, I think it's going to be a pretty simple decision to kind of move him into that spot moving forward, even with the DH coming to hopefully the National League next year on a permanent basis. What else? Before we get out of here, we wanted to get into Brian Anderson as well, and what is going on with him, because I've kind of been the conductor for a couple of years now about locking him up to a long-term contract extension and buying out those ARB years and a couple of free agent years. And during that time, he's just continued to get better and better defensively, but he's just been so streaky offensively. And starting off this year on a pretty cold note, I'll start with you, Kevin, on Brian Anderson hitting as we go into action tonight, where he is, let's see if I got this updated. Hitting 204, 554 OPS. His weighted runs created plus is in the 50s, still just 2 home runs, still striking out more than he ever has before. What is your level of concern with Brian Anderson, and whether we can trust him to kind of work his way out of this at some point relatively soon?
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge concern, just because there's still time. It's a season still pretty. The season just started pretty much. We're only around 30 games in, I'm pretty sure. I don't have a huge concern. He just came back from an injury pretty much just a couple weeks ago, so still got to give him a little bit of time. I think he'll heat up once and hopefully he gives a spark to the offense, or they give him a spark to make something happen. This is a guy who not just helps on offense, but helps on defense as well. So I do like Brian Anderson. I think as of a concern, I don't have a huge concern. But if this continues, maybe, yes, we could have a concern about possibly even not a trade, but maybe, it's just a weird situation with this Marlins team at the end of the day, that you don't even know what you do with the players at this point, or some of them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too concerned with Anderson, although, watching him on off-speed pitches when he gets into 2-strike counts is scary. His BABIP is 270, which isn't amazing, but it also kind of just indicates to you that, if he puts the ball in play more, he's going to find more holes. And, don't give me a Pulitzer Prize for spewing that rhetoric, because obviously, if you're not striking out, you're going to have a better chance of getting hits. But the one concern I will have with Anderson is, while he has gotten better offensively over the last 3 years, his OPS plus has gone up every single season. Ironically enough, every year since 2018, his OPS plus has gone up 3 points a season. So 2018 it was 110, then it was 113 and 116 last year in the abbreviated season. But, what is his ceiling offensively? I don't know if we've ever really discussed it, or if anybody here has ever had that internal conversation with themselves about, like, where do you see the higher end of Brian Anderson's offensive ceiling? Because, Miami would given his defense is like, I wouldn't say it's Nolan Arenado, but it's definitely above league average. I mean, the year he got hurt in 2018 when he got hurt and missed the rest of the season. 2019, yeah. He defensively, he was playing above average right field. He was playing above average third base. I believe he was top 3. I think he was tied with Josh Donaldson for the most defensive runs saved, or at least in that top 3 in defensive runs saved per fielding Bible. And we start to see the bat come around more, and especially more last year when the on-base percentage was, the slugging was was 465, the OPS was above 800, but offensively, where do you see him high? Do you take Brian Anderson on an everyday basis if he's 20% above league average and playing a Gold Glove third base? Do you keep him in the lineup if his defense continues to improve, but his offense kind of, stagnates and he's like a league average offensive player or slightly below league average? I mean, where do we draw the line with him? I mean, he's among my favorite players to watch on this team and somebody that I think we can build around, but where offensively, does he top out at?
I thought he was already pretty close to his ceiling, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, where he's been 10 to 15 to 20% above average year after year after year. And I think that was pretty close to where his ceiling is. But I mean, the comparison in my mind was to someone like Kyle Seager of the Mariners, who is just at the end of his extension. And I mean, Kyle Seager got an $100 million deal. And I think Brian Anderson, just based on what he's accomplished, wasn't even in that territory yet, not particularly close, where they would be able entering this year to lock him up for a lot less than that. And yet I think he could be that guy that contributes in so many different ways. And someone that peaks as 25 home runs a year, maybe 30 when everything goes absolutely right. But for the most part, you just really value his all around game. And the fact that his defense rarely ever seems to slump. And just the fact that aside from that very fluky injury, and it was a fluky injury in 2019 where he got hit by a pitch and ends up missing over a month of time, that aside from that, I think he projects as someone that's really durable because he's a really athletic guy as well. I mean, he just had this oblique injury. I was freaking out when he went on the IL with the oblique strain. I'm like, could be a long-term thing. Obliques are tricky. And he almost comes back in the minimum amount of time from an oblique strain, less than 2 weeks from that, which maybe speaks to the fact that maybe he got lucky, or maybe it just speaks to the fact that he is someone that could recover relatively quickly from those types of baseball things. So I haven't jumped ship yet on having him as a long-term guy. And unfortunately, the Fish Stripes jinx, it took Joe Dunand out of the equation. We had him on our podcast barely over a week ago, and then he suffers his wrist injury, and he had surgery. No, his thumb, a ligament damage to his thumb, and he had to have surgery on that. Unfortunately, will take him out of their plans for the foreseeable future, for maybe the next few months, maybe this entire season. So the next man up isn't all that clear. They tried John Birdie kind of as that stopgap solution, and with some mixed results. And aside from that, a lot of question marks with exactly what they want to do in that situation. I
just have one thing on BA that really concerns me, and it's his stats against the breaking ball and off speed. Let me see if I can find his OPS. Well, they have his batting average, and he's hitting 0.65 against the breaking ball this year and 143 against off speed. His expected slugging percentage against those pitches, 310 against the breaking ball, or 0.49 against off speed. So really right now he's only hitting fastballs, and he's only hitting fastballs at a 291 rate right now. So I don't know what it is with BA. I don't know if the oblique was bothering him, but I was definitely on the pay BA train as well, and I'm not willing to give up on him as say kick him to the curb kind of, but he's got to find something here fast, because he's gotten off to slow starts in his career. He's had bad first halves, and then he's come on with good second halves. But if a guy is only good for half of the year, like Lewis said, what is the ceiling there? What can he really be? Can he really be a franchise cornerstone? And that's what the Marlins, people wanted to extend him as a cornerstone of the franchise, a building block. And I'm not sure you're, right now, based on what we're seeing, unless he gets really hot. But if he's a guy that's only going to be good half the year, and he's like a 270, 280 guy, maybe like an 800 OPS, 750 to 800 OPS, maybe 20 home runs. How much are you paying that guy? He does play Gold Glove defense, so it makes it a little more enticing. But his numbers against the off speed and the breaking ball right now are scary, and it's something that has me worried about just finding sustainable success here.
And the percentile rankings are just ugly. I
Awful.
mean,
Yeah, they're bad.
they're
They're
like
bad.
that's the most concerning thing is, I genuinely hope. I mean, because he's kind of reminding me of like Gabby Sanchez, where Gabby Sanchez had a couple of seasons where he was a slightly above average major league hitter, even made an all-star team. And I think that's definitely something in Anderson's future if he can kind of rebound. But after that 2011 season where Gabby Sanchez was an all-star, he kind of just flailed out.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen to Anderson. I think he's too good of a player for where that will actually happen. But like I'm looking at his expected batting average is in the 19th percentile. His expected weighted on base is in the 12th percentile.
His best percentile right now is his barrel
Barrel
percentage at 52%. And then the second best is sprint speed at 45%. And everything else besides that is under 40% right now.
And even his sprint speed, nobody ever really saw him as an above average runner. That's where I think, defensively, the Arenado comparison is apt because Nolan Arenado, for as great an offensive player as he is, and we know he's a great offensive player. I mean, if you want to look at rudimentary statistics like RBIs and home runs, Nolan Arenado is, on a Hall of Fame track, but he's never been a great runner, and neither has Brian Anderson. But, a 45% sprint speed, of a 0 to 100 scale isn't, that's still below average. I mean, he's not even DJ LeMahieu, and DJ LeMahieu is an average runner at best too. So I am concerned, but at the end of the day, I still think he will pull out of it once he has a little bit more protection in that lineup. I mean, he has Aguilar, and once we get Marte back, and I think he'll probably benefit from having. Blode's struggled a little bit at Double-A so far, but he's got a 342 on base despite a sub 200 batting average. Once JJ Blode comes up into the major leagues, I think maybe Brian Anderson has a little less pressure on him because I will say prior to the start of the season, he was kind of, other than Sixto, if you were to identify like a face of the franchise, argument can be made that it was Brian Anderson. Jesus Aguilar is like the fun guy. Miguel Rojas is the unofficial captain of the team in many people's eyes. But Brian Anderson was kind of like the consensus best player with as far as age and upside that we kind of had. And to see him struggle right now, it's awful because he's fun to watch. And I still kind of have hope being held out for him that he's going to get better.
If I knew we were going to have 5 people here for the whole show, I should have started a lot earlier because we were like an hour in and we didn't get to like half of the stuff I wanted to get to. But this game is already underway. This is supposed to be a preview. So on the final note, the last thing I like to do is just predict how many of these 3 games you think the Marlins are going to win. Kevin loves to do this. We're going to start with Kevin. This 3-game set, Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Dodgers. The Marlins will do what in this series?
I think they'll only win 1 out of the 3 games. I think the one they'll win is the one on Sunday. Now that I find out Walker Buehler isn't pitching, and it's Pablo on Sunday. I had them winning tonight, but then I found out it's Kershaw and it's the top of the order, at the top of the rotation. So, and then it's Bauer. Bauer's a Cy Young winner from last year. He's having a good season. So I think they'll win the 3rd one. I don't think they win the series. I'd be shocked.
Well, things are trending up. Miguel Rojas hit by pitch gets on base to start the game, so things are looking up. Alex, give us your half-baked prediction for the series.
I mean, honestly, if we keep throwing out uncompetitive lineups, and I hate to go back to it, but I'll say it. This is an uncompetitive lineup tonight by Don Mattingly. That's what I think, right? If we keep doing this, we could get swept, honestly. I'll say they may win Sunday as well, just because it's not Buehler. So, yeah, I'll say they win 1 game.
All right, Lewis, out of these 3 games?
I mean, I'd say 1 out of 3. The one thing with Bauer is with the way that Aguilar's been hitting, and Trevor Bauer early this year, despite, having relatively good numbers, has given up the long ball. I believe he's already given up 9-10 home runs at this point in the season. If we can get to Bauer early, a guy that, likes to be like fancy on the mound, and his persona kind of merits that. I think we could maybe steal that game, but yeah, the Dodgers are they're an organization built on pitching. It's, if we win 1 game, I think that's a moral victory in and of itself. So, but I'm saying we're going to lose 2 or 3 if you give me truth serum.
If they salvage 1, it's a win. But
yeah, pretty much. Exactly.
I don't even know if up against the bullpen. But it does seem like the offense can break out at any time. Who knows? They could take Bauer. They could kill Bauer and hit him, knock him around. But 1 is a win. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if I see a win in this series, even against the Pen.
I'm saying they get swept unless they fly Jazz over.
I
tomorrow
would agree
morning.
with you, Eli.
They should do it. Feel very strongly about it. Bring Jazz. He's ready. Let's do it. You're getting swept if you don't bring him over. I don't trust him to do it.
He's ready. It's obvious. I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's obvious, man.
I think they are. Things are going all right for this team, and I think he's not a luxury. I think he's a necessity to get them through this weekend and to get set up for the rest of the year. So, I think everything goes to shit and they get swept. I hope I'm wrong, because it's a little more fun when the team is more competitive. But from Kevin, Alex, Lewis, Ethan, Eli Sussman, thank you for joining us, Fish Stripes Live. Can't wait until this team is back on the East Coast so we could do these at like a normal hour and all that stuff.
Man, I'm exhausted.
But thanks for showing up, guys. And as always, go Fish.
All right.